welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking on a massive, absolutely fascinating topic, the giant puzzle that is India's climate. We're going to take those dense textbook concepts you might remember and break them down into completely clear visual pieces. So whether you're living right in a monsoon zone or you're just really into geographical mysteries, this one is going to totally change how you look at the skies above us. Let's get into it. To really understand what's at stake here, our source chapter opens with this beautiful, ancient Sanskrit verse. May the rains be timely, may the earth be lush with vegetation. I love that because it sets the foundation perfectly, right? Climate isn't just a bunch of abstract data on a chart. It is the literal backdrop of human survival, of our agriculture, our economy. It's the backdrop to everything we do. All right, so here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with weather versus climate, map out India's unique seasons, uncover some hidden climate forces, dive into the mighty monsoon, and finally, confront the very modern challenge of climate change. Starting off with Section 1, weather versus climate. Now, people use these two terms interchangeably all the time, right? Every single day. But scientifically speaking, they are entirely different beasts. And if we want to understand India's geography, we've got to separate the temporary stuff from the permanent stuff. Think of weather as your current daily mood. It's short-term. It's raining one minute, completely sunny the next. Climate, on the other hand, is your overall personality, established over 30 years or more. Basically, you check the weather to figure out what you're wearing today, but you look at the climate to know what kind of clothes you should even have in your closet for the year. Moving right along to Section 2, India's seasons. Okay, so because the Earth revolves around the sun, those long-term climate patterns create some really beautiful, predictable shifts. Now, while a lot of the Western world talks about 4 standard seasons, India traditionally tracks 6 very specific ritus or seasons. You've got Vasanta for spring, Grishma for summer, Varsha for the rainy season, Sharad for autumn, Hemanta for pre-winter, and Shishir for winter. And what's super fascinating to me is that these aren't just dry meteorological divisions. They are deeply, deeply tied to specific rituals, songs, feasts, and festivals. The climate literally dictates the culture.
And this rhythm completely shapes the agriculture and the broader economy, too. When the seasons transition, the daily work out in the fields transitions along with them. The crops that are planted, the harvests that are reaped, and honestly, the sheer economic prosperity of entire communities, it all depends entirely on the predictability of this cycle. It's all connected.
Which brings us to Section 3, forces shaping the climate. So, you might be wondering what invisible forces actually create these different climates. Like, why is one part of India freezing cold while another part is intensely unbearably hot? Well, the first major factor is latitude, meaning your distance from the equator. Places near the equator get direct, nearly perpendicular sun rays. That focuses all that intense solar energy onto a much smaller area, making things very hot. But as you move to higher latitudes, up towards the poles, those same rays become oblique. They scatter over a larger surface area, and they actually have to pass through more atmosphere, which makes those regions much, much cooler. Then there's altitude. And here's the thing. It's actually not about getting closer to the sun. It's all about air density. As you trek up high into the Himalayas, the atmospheric pressure drops. The air becomes a lot less dense. And since the Earth's surface absorbs heat and warms the air right above it, that less dense mountain air simply can't hold as much heat. So the further up you get from the Earth's heat-absorbing surface, the colder it gets. That's exactly why those peaks stay snow-capped all year round. But of course, latitude and altitude don't just work alone. Throw in the moderating effects of the ocean, which naturally cools things down in the summer and warms them up in the winter, plus prevailing winds that drag in either dry or super moist air, and local topography. Actually, mountains and valleys can physically trap air to create their own microclimates. Those are little pockets of unique weather that are totally different from the surrounding region. It is one incredibly complex geographical recipe. All right, Section 4, the mighty monsoon. When you piece all those exact geographical ingredients together, you get the absolute defining feature of India's climate, the monsoon. The word actually comes from the Arabic word mawsam, which means season, and it refers specifically to seasonal winds over a massive area of the Indian Ocean. At its core, this whole system is driven by one very simple physical fact. Land and water heat up and cool down at completely different rates. That simple difference creates massive pressure shifts that violently pull ocean moisture right over the landmass. And when those heavy, moisture-laden winds finally do arrive, wow, It is not just a weather event, it is a monumental environmental shift. Daily life transforms literally overnight. Every single person, every animal, and every plant responds to the arrival of the rains.
Over these months, formerly parched, dry lands are completely soaked. The rivers swell up, the soil is totally revitalized, and life just explodes everywhere. The entire subcontinent is so deeply dependent on this seasonal water cycle. If the monsoon fails, or even if it's just a bit too intense, the consequences for agriculture and human survival are immediate. Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, the Climate Change Challenge. So, what happens when human hands start messing with this finely tuned puzzle? We've established that climate is a long-term, stable pattern, right? However, scientists are now recording some truly alarming shifts. While the Earth has absolutely seen natural climate shifts over millions of years, that's a fact, since the 19th century, human activities have overwhelmingly driven significant, entirely unnatural shifts in temperature and precipitation. We are fundamentally looking at a dual crisis right now. On one side, massive deforestation is clearing out the very trees that regulate our atmosphere. And on the flip side, the heavy burning of fossil fuels and extreme industrial waste are actively altering the atmospheric composition that dictates our climate forces to begin with. The real-world consequences? Extreme weather and totally unpredictable monsoons. So, to survive these changes, we really have to focus on two distinct strategies. First is mitigation, actively reducing our harmful footprint to slow global warming and build a somewhat sustainable future. And second is resilience, which means building the actual capacity to withstand and quickly recover from the floods and heat waves that, honestly, are already at our doorstep. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a critical question pulled right from our chapter to chew on. How can you use this knowledge of our climate vulnerabilities to actively protect your own community? Because understanding this puzzle isn't just about passing some geography test, it's about surviving tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.